welcome to Psychic Holistic Spotlight of Rhode Island. I'm Kathy Costa, your host for today. We also have Josie Way co-hosting with me. And our guest for today is, her name is Juniper Rising. She reads tarot cards, works with some crystals, little crystals, and she's also a Reiki practitioner. It's the first time on the show with us today. She's one of the newer guests, though. So we'll just go right into talking about like how long she's been reading and how long she's been doing this. And we had met at a fair that we had recently done together. I've been reading that there for a few years now, so I think that's the first one for you, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. It was one of those outdoor events in the middle of the summer. That's how we met. So have you started, so let's talk about how you started. Did you start with the Reiki, or did you start with the tarot cards, or did it just kind of came at the same time?
Well, it's interesting, actually. I started with astrology.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes,
okay.
When I was really young, and just an affinity for reading books and going to the bookstore, and astrology books were my go-to.
Okay.
And so I kind of say that's like my gateway to sort of the spiritual realm of different tools to sort of divinate and connect with spirit and the universe and nature.
Okay, how young were you when that started?
Oh gosh, I'm 12 or just maybe a little bit younger than that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's good, though. Your parents were encouraging then. You know, kind of encouraging to just be open. Okay.
Yes, I've always had a very inquisitive mind. I was listening to you talking earlier, and you were saying how you have you have questions with God, with spirit, always asking. And I feel like I'm kind of in that realm of things where I'm always just wanting to learn and put things together, especially with symbols. Okay. I'm really into symbolism and art and how the universe is always communicating with us and to us. Yes, yeah, and synchronicities and and also just these little reminders that we're not alone and that we're connected to this.
Yeah, that's
bigger
fantastic.
Yeah,
especially when the same thing keeps coming up. Like there's like a theme to people's conversations, you know. And I think we were just talking about that though too. Though, how the same topic keeps coming up. Like, well, that's a sign, you know, to get into, you know, whatever that is or whatever the topic is.
Yeah, they say if you receive a sign, especially 3 times, that third sign is your inclination to okay,
so 3 times. So
it's time to look into what this is trying to tell me.
Sometimes I have to get a sign like 10 times for me to get it.
Yeah.
And then that's what I'm like, okay, they're yelling at me at that point. I'm like, okay, guys, I get it finally.
Yeah.
A lot of times for me, it's confirmation that something I want to do or don't want to do, that I'm on the right track. When I get, it depends on the messages I get, but the signs I get, if they're by the third one, I'm like, I gotcha. I should do this, I shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love it when I'm driving down the road and I see a license plate that says 444 or 333, and then I'm seeing it all day long. I'm like, okay, I made the right decision, or I made a good decision aligned
the
to
angel numbers. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I like the way we can tell how not to do something, though, because the conversation is like, okay, kind of against going in that direction.
I think there's a whole bunch of workers on the other side that coordinate all these little synchronicities.
Oh, I think so. I think that is a full-time job for a few of them up there. It has to be.
It'd be a whole Pixar movie. You're just watching somebody like in a control room be like,
that's a good idea.
You didn't get this sign, send him another one.
That's a good one.
A lot of my clients and my friends, we joke about it too, because it's like, you always want that signier sign, because we're constantly getting information. And especially now with technology, I mean, we're almost bombarded with it. But if you learn how to sift through it and really sit with the energy and the messages coming through, you'll get it. But we get into our heads about it and start to dismiss it. And then it's like, well, was that my sign, or did it mean this? And when we joke about it, I'm like, ask for the sign your sign, because you'll get it.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things too with starting my business and my holistic practice. I remember wanting that sign and driving down the highway being like, I need the sign, your sign. And there was one of those huge trailers, like truck trailers, and the back said, it said, be your own boss. And I just was like, okay.
Can't be much clearer than that.
No, capital letters. Got it. I wanted to dismiss it, but I couldn't because it's a sign your sign. It's like, and that's kind of how I feel like the spiritual work is, when you're connecting with spirit and when you're aligning to these different events or situations in your life. It's experiences, and there are some experiences that you have that you just can't dismiss because they strike a chord within the body, within the soul. It's even if the mind and the brain wants to dismiss it, it can't, because it's like
feeling in your stomach or even in your heart. It's like, okay, gotta do this. There's something to it. Yeah.
Like there's a saying for bringing in your conscious awareness to your psychic abilities and just connecting to your soul consciousness, and it's I am. And if you say I am and you notice where you feel it in your body, it's where your soul sits within the physical realm, within your body. And I found that fascinating too.
Yeah, it really is. So do you still do astrology though? Do you still remember it enough though to give a reading that way?
I do, and I blend it into all my readings and healing sessions. So oftentimes when I'm doing a reading or a healing, I'm picking up on an energetic imprint, mostly around somebody's within their aura. And I can pick up on images or symbols, things that somebody has been experiencing for that week, and I can connect it to the astrological placements and what's going on currently. And it kind of helps bridge what somebody's experiencing. I mean, we're all pretty familiar with, I feel like, Mercury retrograde at this point because it's become so mainstream. And a lot of times people are like, what's retrograde now? Like, what planet is in retrograde? Because I'm feeling super funky. And so I find that often helps when we connect and we bridge those things together. We don't feel as lost or as separate or that there's something wrong with us.
That's a big one.
We're actually in harmony, and we're in tune with what's going on around.
Yes, more so.
By feeling funky.
Yeah, more so than we realize. Yeah, for sure.
So, I guess you read tarot cards, right? Okay. When did you start reading the cards, and how did that come up for you?
So that came up in, I want to say 2010. And I had a friend who kept recommending the Magic Mirror in Bristol, Rhode Island. And so I went there and I had a reading with Connie.
They're not open anymore, right?
No,
she passed.
She passed.
Okay, that's what I heard. Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, so I went to see her for a reading, and she was very encouraging and helpful in helping me kind of find my way, find my path at the time. And at the time it was to go to art school, but all the times that I would come see her, she would say, you're a healer. One day you're going to be sitting where I am doing readings. And I was...
You must have thought she was crazy, right?
Well, I didn't think she was crazy, but I couldn't wrap my mind around how I was going to get from where I was then to there. Like, it didn't seem part of my path or my journey.
It just didn't make sense for you.
I was like, I'm going to art school. Like, how am I... This isn't going to connect. I don't see that happening. But she... Even readings that she gave me then, there's little tidbits that are helpful now, which I find fascinating. So when you go to get a reading, oftentimes people are like, well, tell me what's happening and going to happen now. And it's like all that information may not even resonate until a year or 2 or 3 years later. Because that's, I mean, you kind of are tapping into quantum physics in a way, in the past, the present, and the future. It's all happening in the now. And so that, it's like a rabbit hole of discovery that
every choice that you make, like in the game of pinball, ricochets off of other choices that people are making. I can't figure out how they manage to figure all of this stuff out up there.
No, it's so funny. I read something with astrology. If there was any sign who could have organized it, it would have been a Virgo, because they're so structured and organized and disciplined. Because it's like, how do you take this massive amount of information and put it into some sort of synthesized, clear
So
map?
the way Spirit explained it to me a while ago, because I always like to know the why for stuff.
Yeah.
It's just even to like today, I have to know like why. Why does this happen? Time in this side though is linear. You know, it goes in one direction. And the Spirit side, it happens all at once.
Right.
So that's how they get the whole story of like the past, present, and future. That's how they see the whole story. So that's how things are always happening. So we don't get the full story on this side because it only goes in one direction, not all three. So that's why it's frustrating for us down here.
That's so interesting.
Right, and
Yeah.
they actually showed me in a way kind of like a little fireball, where all the time they'll kind of like all the flares kind of goes out in all directions around from that little fireball in all directions. It's how things kind of happen. Yeah, that's how they explained it to me. I'm like, this is really, really kind of cool. Because I wasn't getting it. I'm like, okay, guys, can you show me a different way? And that's why they showed me the fireball. So that's how things are kind of happening. And that's how things kind of get coordinated, though, too.
Interesting.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's one of those things too, like it's almost as if the minute you try to put any sort of word or try to like put it into some sort of box, it loses its essence and its expansiveness because it doesn't
It's not one-dimensional, two-dimensional.
No,
Yeah.
but we try to put it into some sort of
So it makes sense, though, for the physical brain, and we
Right.
just can't do it.
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
the mind wants to know, but the body and the soul and the spirit just wants to be.
Yeah. This wants to exist.
It's like
yeah.
it knows. There's knowing
Yeah.
in that, yeah. And I heard it described too that it's almost like your intuition is that future energy coming back to let your present self know information through that sort of like quantum.
Yeah. It's kind of like the deja vu effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's what it is, though, it's like we actually put it into a soul contract for like different points in life so we know we're in the right direction.
Yes.
So
signs.
Yes.
Synchronicity.
Yeah.
Symbols.
So that's the body's intuition, though, of it kind of tying everything together, though, too.
Yeah.
It's like a memory. That's why it feels like it already happened, even though it didn't.
Yes.
You know. Right. So the soul contract is a whole
It's in
different
the
thing.
process.
But yes, that's why it feels like it's kind of already
Yeah.
happened. Yeah, because we already agreed to it. So that's why it's just us remembering, because we don't remember the physical side when we come.
I often ask myself what I was thinking when I started this path that I'm on.
Like, what was that conversation I agreed to? Exactly.
I wondered that myself with some of the stuff. Yeah.
There's this really funny reel going on online on social media, and it's a conversation with Spirit if Spirit was Alexa.
Oh, that's
And
interesting. I haven't seen that yet.
I haven't seen it either.
and Alexa's like, you have completed your life on Earth. Do you feel complete? And the person says, I'm complete. And Alexa says, oh, I heard incomplete. Reincarnating you back to Earth.
Oh, no.
And the person's like, no, I am complete. And it just cracks me up so much.
Yeah, I do appreciate that too.
Yeah, and like to what you were saying, once you make a choice, you sort of eliminate a lot of different possibilities because you start a trajectory towards that path. And it's similar to art and to painting because there's this like fear and block that often comes up when you have this blank canvas. And you're like, well, what am I going to create? What am I going to do? And the minute you make one stroke, you've already informed what that painting is going to be. You've eliminated all these other possibilities. And it's not to say that you don't still have access to them, but this one part is already on its way to its becoming.
Yeah.
Which is just fascinating.
So it is, and what I find a lot of times in the readings, people have started this in one direction, they just haven't realized it yet. So when I try to tell them that, okay, this is the direction that's happening, so you got options here. And some of them are like, oh, no, that's not what happened, this is what I want. I'm like, it's not going to happen that way. So I don't know if you've ever seen that, though, too, though, in the readings, though, when you give...
She gets very definite, pushes into that, this is not the way it's going to happen.
Right, because I get a lot of that though. So, yeah, and
She gets very concise, tight suggestions.
yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. They'll get, sometimes it's like so specific that's like, I don't know where it comes from.
Yes,
You
yeah.
know?
I did recently have a reading with someone who it came through very strongly that they would be moving. And she was like, no, there's no way I'm moving. And I'm like, I don't normally say it so strongly, but it's coming through. You're moving. You
Yeah.
might not know it now, but it's coming.
happening, yeah.
20 minutes later, she sent me a text and she said, I'm moving. And I called her and I was like, well, that's a fast turnaround.
Yeah.
Normally it's like a year later, somebody comes back, they've moved.
Yeah.
And it wasn't her physically in her home, it was her business
Okay.
that was moving. And as soon as she finished the reading, she got an offer
Yeah.
from the person who she was sharing, renting a room from. who
Oh,
was
that's
moving.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes it's not the little what we're thinking, though, that might be. But it's
Often.
it definitely gets encompassed by whatever's
Yes.
being shown. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, one time for me, there was like, what I was seeing now for a client of mine, she's a regular for me, and she was interested in actually moving, like where she lived, but she wanted to live on her own. And I told her, I was like, I don't see that for a while. I see you moving in with a friend, I don't know who, but a friend. And so I'm thinking it was like 6 to 8 months later, she had moved in with this friend.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a good friend, but it didn't work out for very long. But you know how sometimes people get funny though when you live with them. So it's like she just found another place. So like I think it was like a week ago she was telling me like where she actually is living on her own. But she had to. It was like a stepping stone for her though. It's like I told you, you're not going to stay there long. But that's what I see. So sometimes it is a literal
Yes.
message though, but it's not always though. And 20 minutes later is a fast turnaround.
Yeah, and it's important that's such an important experience to share because so often people think that it has to happen a certain way or the trajectory that they're trying to manifest something, there's so much control on it, and that's just not often how it works. It's like you were saying, we live in such a linear structure and the universe is anything but linear.
Right, yeah, because it happens all at the same time, yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's why they invented circular reasoning.
there is something that we keep going back in circles, yes.
Yeah. Or spirals.
Yeah, yes, there's that though too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the readings are where, like I had said though, it's like where you think that you're going to go in a direction for yourself when you're asking all these questions or when you get in the reading yourself, but yet it doesn't turn out that way. It's like you want to, some of the clients want a certain relationship to work, but it's not going to be working because you don't see it lasting like a year. you know.
Right.
So, I know relationships come up a lot in readings though too, though, just because I read cards as well though too. So for a lot of the readings for you though, you get a lot of those like, okay, what's happening with this relationship though, or what's going on with work? Do you get a lot of those questions though?
I mean, pretty average.
Okay.
Everyone
It's a little bit
wants to
different, yeah.
know about love, of course.
Yeah.
Whether they're single or they're in a relationship. I'm finding more often, especially now in the current sort of time that we're in, a lot of people are just very much concerned about their stability and having what they need. And so they're coming into the reading of, is this a good path? Should I choose to go this route? And there's a lot of, oftentimes there's a little bit of fear and nervousness about making a mistake or assigning meaning to the path. So very similar to what we're talking about, where like, you kind of have this like fixed trajectory of like, I'm gonna have this career, I'm gonna do this one thing, I'm gonna get married, this is my whole life. And it's like, well, life is full of experiences. And if you think of it that way, there are no real mistakes.
Yeah.
They're just experiences that teach you
Where
a
you
lot.
need to be at that moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that might be the branching off or stepping stone to something else. So it's like you can have those goals because that's really important, but also be open to how the universe can bring you those things.
Yeah, because a lot of people struggle with wasting time.
Yes.
And it's just, you're not really wasting time, it's just where you need to be for right now, because you need to finish something off. Like finish like the path that you share with that person, or you're just not ready yet though for the next step, because you got figured out right now, though what you're going on right now, kind of thing. So it's like it's not really a mistake, even though it feels like you're wasting time, but you're not.
Right.
So a lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah, and in those times, it's giving you the opportunity to get to know yourself, to be really still and go through that transformation, and to really kind of be present. I mean, we're in a society that is always go, 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 do the next thing. And even when we're manifesting, we're like, okay, I want this, shiny new crystal. And then you're like, okay, I got the shiny new crystal. And then you're already on to the next. Where's the time to just be present with where you are and appreciate it? And sometimes it can be, it's one of the universal laws of polarity, right? Is that you have various ends of the same thing. Everything is different, even though it's the same. So like temperature, you have hot, you have cold, but they're just temperature, they're varying degrees. And so, just like good or bad, if you're having a very blissful moment, how can you really just like savor it? Because that moment, you're never gonna have that same moment again. You'll have similar moments, but that moment or the people you're with or that place that you are is its own moment. And even the times that are very difficult, or you're struggling, or there's obstacles and challenges, can you still hold that appreciation and presence for that, knowing that we're never ever stuck at one end of the spectrum. We're always ebbing and flowing and moving through it.
Life is about balance and harmony.
Yes.
And accepting exactly where you are in it at the time.
Yes.
That's the really hard part.
It's very hard. But it is, I feel like, a key for miracles to happen. Acceptance is not necessarily saying that I agree with this or I necessarily want this, but I'm okay with this being my experience right now and knowing that it's temporary. And a new experience will present itself.
So a lot of times you have to remind ourselves of that, though. Sometimes you have to remind the clients of that when they're coming.
Yes.
Yeah. What I try to say to people that are going through something that they find unpleasant, because it's hard for them to believe that everything is for good, for their highest good. And it's hard to believe, so long as you can't believe that the thing that you're going through is for your good, you're going to resist it, and you're going to be stuck there a lot longer. If you don't like the space you're in.
It's hard for us to remember that there's a lesson or an experience in everything. So when we forget that, that's where we get stuck, though, too.
It's kind of like ripping off the Band-Aid. If you don't tend to the wound, it gets infected and it turns into a bigger problem, and you're stuck there healing it longer.
Sometimes people just don't get like the repeating patterns, like the same kind of bad relationship, or like keep repeating. It's like, okay, this is not good though, so I'm going to do that. It's like you got to figure out why this keeps happening first, so it doesn't keep happening.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you're in it, it's anything but clear. And there's that quote, I'm trying to remember who said it, but it's everyone can master a grief but he who has it. And it might be Shakespeare. But I always loved that quote because when you're not in the experience that someone else is having, you're not understanding. It's easier for you to be able to see the pattern. Or be like, oh, it's so clear to me, like just do X, Y, or Z, and then you'll be free of it. But for that person, that's part of their journey, their lesson, their path.
To unravel it.
Yes. And they will get there, and oftentimes they just need that support. More than often, I feel like, when people are struggling, they just need to be seen, heard, loved.
Right. But you can't cross over the threshold to where you're doing it for them.
Correct.
That's the other little tricky part.
Right, because of free will.
Yeah.
And because it's kind of like that saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You can say, here's a path, here is a doorway, here's what I'm seeing sort of unfold for you, and the options that are before you. And then they have to decide.
So what comes up a lot, though, is the same subject, that like hindsight is always 20/20.
Oh, yes.
But when you're in the middle of it, you don't see it. So a lot of times, when people that we care about, those going through this difficult moment, we're trying to step in, but it's like, nope, they got to see it for themselves. You got to back off. Because I always tell them, it's like you're fighting human nature when you're telling someone that they shouldn't be doing something. It's like kind of like telling a kid to not touch the stove. What's the first thing they're going to do is touch that stove. And adults it's the same way as kids.
Yeah.
You know,
well,
so
we're still kids.
Yeah. In the grand scheme of stuff, then the soul level,
bodies.
absolutely. Yeah, and that's the thing though too, is souls first, though humans second. That's what I always tell people. You know, we decided to be souls first, and we just decided to come back, you know, as humans. So it's like a lot of times when we get to that point, I struggle that a lot of times with, like, especially the parents that come in, you know, that like, you know, the kid's an adult now, they got to figure the stuff out for themselves now. If you keep poking that bear, you're just despairing the relationship you have with that child.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like time and time again, though, it's like if this is one client that would come, she had come to me because she was having problems with her daughter, but come to find out, though, like the first time that she had come to me, there was about to be like a harassment order against the mother in court. I'm like, well, you keep bothering her, what do you think is going to happen? She just kind of looked at me. And it was after a few times, she kind of got, it's like, okay, you got to back off. And like, as soon as she backed off with the daughter, the relationship actually got better. You know, so it's just like, the intentions are good, but people got to learn the lesson for themselves, you know, for that though. And like, people have just got to just kind of forget that, like, you got to do that support. You got to support people, but you can't make the decision for people. You know, a lot of times we forget that.
And that's a hard thing to navigate in relationships, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're getting to the end of the show. So if someone wants to get a hold of you, what's your phone number and your email? If they want to get a hold of you?
Email is juniperrising444@gmail.com, and phone number is 401-595-1638.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
So.
and social media, Instagram.
Oh, they can find you as Juniper Rising under them? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great, though. You get all
I
our
didn't
news
catch
here.
that.
On social media too, if you go to @Juniper Rising Tarot on Instagram or Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah.
So you do also Reiki as well, I believe, right?
Yes, I do Reiki
And
healing
you sell crystals.
soon.
Ah,
Yes.
that's coming. Well, by the time
When will
we
then be now?
by the time we get this on the air, it may be open.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. Got a few months,
Good
yeah.
timing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So when did you start the Reiki practice?
When did I start? Reiki practice started in 2016,
Okay.
and that was when I became a Reiki master, and I just received my teacher training and a Holy Fire master training.
Okay.
So,
That's some good energy.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't practice that, though, but that is some good energy.
Love Reiki, and that's definitely one of those things that's a must to experience to understand.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how did you get into the Reiki practicing?
Through Connie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she said, "You're a healer," and
Okay.
I was like, I don't know what that means. And I went to her Reiki one, and it wasn't until 3 or 4 years later that I actually continued that practice, and it was after I had received it myself.
Okay.
And then I realized, oh, this is what I'm able to do for somebody else, and this is what they would be experiencing.
Yeah.
And it's very life-changing.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
The way you can actually help speed up the healing process, and like emotionally and physically though too.
Yeah, and it just helps people connect to their inner world, and I'm finding more often that's where like stuff is going with clients, is helping them tap into their intuition.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And a lot of times when people actually can actually feel the release though too during the session.
Yeah, I mean, it's like watching somebody come, if you've ever seen somebody leave a massage, and they have that like Zen, like I call it Reiki brain. They're just like, where was I? Where did I go?
That's a good name for it.
Yeah.
That really is a good name. Yeah.
How do I get back there?
I don't know.